that everybody's keeping, and everybody thinks they're keeping it alone. Everybody's scared of something, everybody's carrying a weight. Everybody's smiling in the daylight, trying not to think about the things that keep them awake. Everybody's scared of something, even if they never say a word. Sometimes the strongest looking people are fighting battles nobody's ever heard. I remember being 7 years old, lying awake, staring into the dark. Certain there were monsters in the hallway, certain there were shadows in the yard. Funny how the years keep moving forward, funny how the seasons rearrange. The monsters never really disappeared, they just learned to wear different names. Now they're called failure, now they're called loss, now they're called loneliness, now they're called cost, now they're called judgment, now they're called shame. Same old shadows, different names. Everybody's scared of something, everybody's carrying a weight. Everybody's smiling in the daylight, trying not to think about the things that keep them awake. Everybody's scared of something, even if they never say a word. Sometimes the strongest looking people are fighting battles nobody's ever heard. The businessman is scared he'll lose everything, the artist is scared nobody cares. The mother is scared she'll get it wrong, the father is scared he wasn't there. The soldier is scared of old memories, the dreamer is scared to begin. The lover is scared of being abandoned, the lonely is scared to let somebody in. And the funny thing is, most of us spend our whole lives trying to look fearless in front of people who are doing exactly the same thing. Everybody's scared of something, everybody's carrying a weight. Everybody's smiling in the daylight, trying not to think about the things that keep them awake. Everybody's scared of something, even if they never say a word. Sometimes the strongest looking people are fighting battles nobody's ever heard. I watch people build walls around themselves, then wonder why nobody came close. I've watched people bury their dreams alive because certainty felt safer than hope. I've done both more times than I care to admit. Built excuses, built distractions, built entire stories just to avoid risking it. Because fear is convincing, fear is intelligent, fear knows exactly what to say. Fear can make a cage feel comfortable and call it alive. Maybe courage was never fearlessness, maybe we got that part wrong. Maybe courage is hearing fear scream in your ear and taking one more step beyond. Maybe courage is making the call, maybe courage is saying goodbye. Maybe courage is asking for help, maybe courage is finally trying. Everybody's scared of something, everybody's carrying a weight. Everybody's searching for a reason to believe it's not already too late. Everybody's scared of something, maybe that's how it's always been. Maybe the question isn't whether you're afraid, maybe the question is, what would you do if fear didn't get to decide who you've been? There's a secret everybody's keeping, and maybe it's time we stop pretending. the adults had a map. I thought somebody somewhere had already figured everything out. The teachers look certain, the doctors look sure, the people on television seemed confident and secure. The politicians had speeches, the preachers had plans, the experts had answers and charts in their hands. I thought growing older meant finally knowing why everybody seemed so confident every time they spoke their mind. Then one day I looked around and started noticing the cracks, the hesitation in the voices, the way behind the masks. Nobody knows what they're doing, not as much as they pretend. We're all writing the instructions while we're living in them. Nobody knows what they're doing, we're all learning as we go, making sense of the mystery one day at a time, one step down the road. The parent brings the baby home, and suddenly they're supposed to know how to shape a human life while they themselves still grow. The business owner takes the risk and hopes the numbers work. The artist stares at a blank page, wondering if inspiration will emerge. The therapist has difficult days, the professor still has doubts. The strongest person in the room still wonders if they'll figure it out. Every generation thinks the next one has lost its way, while secretly making mistakes they'll understand someday. Nobody knows what they're doing, not as much as they pretend. We're all writing the instructions while we're living in them. Nobody knows what they're doing, we're all learning as we go, making sense of the mystery, one day at a time, one step down the road. I think that's why we're so afraid to admit when we're unsure, because uncertainty feels dangerous when everyone else looks secure. But maybe the secret wisdom nobody ever tells is that confidence isn't certainty, it's learning to trust yourself. The people I respect the most rarely claim they know it all. They're the first to ask questions and the first to admit when they fall. Maybe humility isn't weakness, maybe it's where wisdom starts. Maybe knowing what you don't know is one of the strongest forms of heart. The pilot checks the instruments, the surgeon checks the scan, the musician rewrites verses, the builder adjusts the plan. Not because they're incompetent, not because they fail, because reality keeps changing and certainty eventually pales. Nobody knows what they're doing, not completely, not for long. Life keeps changing the questions right when we think we got them solved. Nobody knows what they're doing, maybe that's not something to fear, maybe that's what makes us human, maybe that's why we're here. So if you've been waiting for the day you finally feel like you have everything figured out, what if that day never comes? And what if that's perfectly okay? talks about it much, but every clock in the world is telling the same story. Being 10 years old, summer felt 100 years long. Sunset took forever to arrive. Every day felt like a song. And somehow the seasons accelerated. Birthdays started showing up faster. The years began folding into years, chapter after chapter. I watched grandparents become photographs, friends become memories, children become adults, dreams become histories. And somewhere between the first breath and whatever waits beyond the last, time kept moving forward, never asking permission to pass. Every second of every day, time is winning, whether we notice or look away. Time is winning against empires, kings, and gold. Time is winning against everything we try to hold. The mansion and the tiny apartment both answer to the same clock. The millionaire and the janitor both walk the same ticking block. The famous face on the billboard, the stranger nobody sees, both borrow their moments from the same invisible lease. We spend years chasing tomorrow like tomorrow owes us something, and wake up one morning wondering where all the yesterdays went. Running a calendar never argues, a sunset never negotiates. Time doesn't hate us, it simply never waits. Time is winning every second of every day. Time is winning whether we notice or look away. Time is winning against empires, kings, and gold. Time is winning against everything we try to hold. I've seen people save their dreams for some future perfect day. A day when they're less busy, a day when they're less afraid, a day when conditions align, a day when certainty appears, a day that quietly disappears into another year. I've done it too, put life on hold, made deals with imaginary tomorrows, as if the universe had signed a contract guaranteeing more time to borrow. But every cemetery tells the truth, every wrinkle knows the score. The future isn't promised, not for the rich, not for the poor. Maybe that's not depressing, maybe it's the gift, maybe a limitation is what gives life meaning. Maybe the ending is what makes us listen. What are you doing with the one you're on? The clock keeps ticking, the sun keeps setting, tomorrow keeps coming. What have you been waiting to start? There are some truths most people spend their lives trying not to think about. I remember sitting at a kitchen table, listening to stories I'd heard before. A voice I thought would always be there, drifting across the room, like it had 1,000 times before. The coffee steamed, the clock ticked, the dog slept by the chair. Nothing about the moment felt important, because I thought there would always be another one there. That's the trick life plays on us. The ordinary feels endless while it's here, and only later do we realize those were the days we'd miss for years. The people you love will die, not today, maybe not for a long, long time, but someday goodbye arrives. For every hand you've held, every laugh you've shared, every face you've memorized, the people you love will die. So love them while they're alive. A photograph is a strange invention, proof that time keeps moving on, frozen evidence that a moment existed long after the moment is gone. We fill our houses with reminders, frames and memories on the wall, tiny monuments to people who once felt permanent to us all. I think about the conversations that seem too small to remember then, yet somehow become priceless treasures once we realize they can't happen again. The jokes, the habits, the stories, the flaws, the things that used to drive us crazy become the things we miss the most. The people you love will die, not today, maybe not for a long, long time, but someday goodbye arrives. For every hand you've held, every laugh you've shared, every face you've memorized, the people you love will die. So love them while they're alive. Oh, I've seen people wait for the perfect moment to say the things they meant to say, wait for the perfect apology, wait for a better day, wait to make the phone call, wait to mend the fence, wait until life slows down, wait until it makes sense. But life keeps moving, the clock keeps turning, and one day the opportunity is gone, leaving behind a question that echoes much longer than regret. What if I had done it while I still could? Tell them now, not tomorrow, not someday, not eventually. Tell them you love them, tell them you're grateful, tell them they matter, tell them the story, tell them the joke, make the visit, take the picture, answer the phone, because one day you would give anything and so will you. Which means this moment, this conversation, this day matters more than you think it does. Who have you been meaning to call? And what's stopping you? It's strange. Some people spend their lives acting like they'll live forever. Others spend their lives acting like it's already too late. I've met 20-year-olds convinced they missed their chance, 30-year-olds apologizing for dreams they haven't started, 40-year-olds comparing themselves to people they don't know, 50-year-olds mourning futures that never existed, 60-year-olds wishing they'd worried less, 70-year-olds wishing they'd begun sooner, and all of them standing in the same moment, looking backward instead of looking around. It's amazing how often we mistake pressure for purpose and urgency for direction. You are not running out of time, you are running through time. There's a difference, one feels like panic, the other feels like life. You are not running out of time, not today, you're standing in it right now. The question isn't how much is left, the question is, what are you doing with this hour? The oak tree doesn't compare itself to the wildflower. The river doesn't apologize for taking a different route. The sunrise never rushes the tide, never asks permission. Nature seems perfectly comfortable, growing at the speed growth requires. Yet somehow we became convinced that life was a race and everybody else got the starting gun before we did. Maybe the finish line was never the point. You are not running out of time, you are running through time. There's a difference, one feels like panic, the other feels like life. You are not running out of time, not today, you're standing in it right now. The question isn't how much is left, the question is, what are you doing with this hour? I've seen people start businesses at 60, learn instruments at 70, find love at 80, change careers after decades, write books after retirement, build friendships after heartbreak, begin healing after years of pain, begin living after years of surviving. Life doesn't seem nearly as concerned with schedules as we are. Maybe we've been listening to the wrong clocks. Maybe some things arrive exactly when they're ready, not a moment sooner. There are dreams that need action, that's true. There are conversations you've been avoiding, that's true too. There are risks worth taking and roads worth walking, but panic rarely improves the journey. It usually just makes us miss the scenery. You are not running out of time, you are living inside it, breathing inside it, loving inside it, learning inside it. You are not running out of time, at least not today. Today is still here, still breathing, still waiting, still yours. If you stop treating your life like a countdown, what would you finally allow yourself to begin? This might be the hardest song on the album. Not because it's complicated, because nobody wants it to be true. It's easy when they're far away, easy when they're just a name, a face on a screen, a headline, a rumor, a villain in a story you've already explained. It's easy when they're one thing, one mistake, one opinion, one decision, one moment frozen in time. It's easy when they're not human anymore, at least not in your mind. 'Cause once someone becomes an enemy, something strange begins to happen. We stop seeing a person and start seeing a symbol. But the person you hate cries too. The person you hate gets scared. The person you hate lies awake some nights wondering if anybody cares. The person you hate has regrets. The person you hate has pain. The person you hate carries invisible wounds you may never see or explain. That doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean they're innocent. It doesn't mean you have to trust them, forgive them, or let them back into your life. Some people cause real damage. Some people leave real scars. Some people break things that cannot be easily repaired. This song isn't about pretending otherwise. It's about remembering something deeper. Before they became whatever happened, they were a child too. The person you hate cries too. The person you hate gets scared. The person you hate has people they love and people they've lost somewhere. The person you hate tells themselves stories just like you do every day, trying to make sense of their choices, trying to find a way. I've noticed something uncomfortable. Every generation seems convinced that the problem with the world is the other people, the other side, the other tribe, the other group, the other belief, the other voice, the other whatever. And yet somehow every person believes they're the reasonable one, the good one, the hero of the story. Maybe that's worth thinking about. What if understanding isn't agreement? What if compassion isn't surrender? What if seeing someone's humanity doesn't require approving of their actions? What if the first step toward healing is refusing to become the thing we're fighting against? The person you hate cries too. The person you hate feels lost. The person you hate is heading toward the same ending, no matter what they gain or what it costs. The person you hate is human, which might be the hardest truth of all. Because if that's true, then maybe hatred isn't as simple as we wanted it to be. When was the last time you hated someone without knowing their whole story? For a long time, I thought somebody would eventually show up. Somebody smarter, somebody stronger, somebody who knew what to do. When I was younger, the future felt like a rescue mission. I thought one day the answers would arrive in a letter, a promotion, a relationship, a breakthrough, a perfect opportunity. Something would happen, and suddenly life would make sense. So I waited and waited and waited for permission to begin. Nobody is coming, not the hero, not the rescue ship, not the perfect moment. No, nobody is coming, and strangely enough, that might be the best news you've ever heard. Postpone entire lives, waiting for certainty, waiting for confidence, waiting for motivation, waiting for support, waiting for approval, waiting for the fear to disappear before they took the first step. Years passed, then decades, and the waiting slowly became the story. Meanwhile, life kept moving without asking whether they were ready. Nobody is coming, not the hero, not the rescue ship, not the perfect moment. No, nobody is coming, and strangely enough, that might be the best news you've ever heard. The people who change their life usually don't feel ready. The people who start businesses don't know exactly what will happen. The people who heal still carry wounds. The people who become courageous still feel fear. Action comes first, confidence comes later. Movement creates clarity, not the other way around. That's the part nobody tells you. The day I stopped waiting, something changed, not outside, inside. The world didn't suddenly become easier. The obstacles didn't disappear. The uncertainty remained, but the responsibility became mine, and somehow that felt lighter than waiting forever. Nobody is coming because you are already here. Nobody is coming because the hands you've been waiting for are attached to your own arms. Nobody is coming because the voice you've been waiting to hear has been inside you the whole time. Nobody is coming, nobody is coming, and that's not a tragedy, it's an invitation. Nobody is coming, which means today still belongs to you. Nobody is coming, which means the next move is yours. Nobody is coming. So what are you going to do? How much of your life have you spent waiting for a green light that was never required? When people hear the word miracle, they usually imagine something impossible. But I've started to wonder if we've been looking in the wrong direction. A man wakes up sober for the first time in years, and nobody writes about it, nobody cheers. A mother works 2 jobs and still makes it to the game. A friend answers the phone at exactly the right moment and never gets credit for the save. A teenager decides to keep going one more day. A stranger offers kindness, then quietly walks away. No headlines, no cameras, no crowd standing around. Just small acts of courage happening every day all over town. Most miracles look ordinary. Most miracles arrive quietly. Most miracles don't break the laws of nature, they simply break the cycle. Most miracles look ordinary. Most miracles don't ask for applause. They happen in living rooms, hospitals, classrooms, and hearts every single day. Every single day. A father learns how to listen instead of always needing to be right. A daughter forgives something she's carried for most of her life. Someone finally asks for help after years of suffering alone. Someone chooses healing instead of becoming what hurt them. Someone keeps their promise when nobody would have known if they didn't. Someone tells the truth even though it costs them. Those moments rarely trend, they rarely make history books, yet somehow they change entire futures. Most miracles look ordinary. Most miracles arrive quietly. Most miracles don't break the laws of nature, they simply break the cycle. Most miracles look ordinary. Most miracles don't ask for applause. They happen in living rooms, hospitals, classrooms, and hearts every single day. Every single day. Maybe that's why we miss them. We're looking for fireworks while life keeps handing us candles. We're looking for lightning while change keeps arriving. One decision at a time, one conversation at a time, one choice at a time. Maybe miracles aren't rare. Maybe attention is. Maybe wonder isn't disappearing. Maybe we're just distracted. I've seen recovery, I've seen forgiveness, I've seen people rebuild after losing everything. I've seen lonely people find belonging. I've seen broken families heal. I've seen exhausted people keep showing up. I've seen ordinary humans do extraordinary things, and most of them would never call themselves miraculous. Most miracles look ordinary. Most miracles never make the news. Most miracles happen when somebody chooses love over fear, truth over comfort, hope over surrender. Most miracles look ordinary, which means you might have already witnessed one today and never realized it. What's the most miraculous thing you've started treating like it's normal? The strangest thing happened. We built a tool to connect humanity and somehow forgot to look up. Every day begins with a glowing rectangle waiting on the nightstand beside the bed before our feet touch the floor. Thousands of voices, opinions, arguments, predictions, demands already filling our heads. The world arrives filled counted, ranked, sorted, curated, optimized for attention, not understanding. And after enough years, it's easy to mistake the algorithm for reality. But the internet is not reality. The loudest voice isn't always true. The angriest person isn't everybody, and the whole world isn't inside your feed. The internet is not reality. It's a reflection, a distortion, a mirror made of code. Sometimes useful, sometimes dangerous, always incomplete. Online, everybody seems certain. Everybody seems perfect. Everybody seems successful. Everybody seems furious. Everybody seems divided. Everybody seems impossible to reach. Then you go outside and the cashier smiles, the neighbor waves, a stranger holds a door open. Kids laugh in a park, people help each other carry groceries. And suddenly the world feels different than it did 5 minutes ago. Looking through the glass, the internet is not reality. The loudest voice isn't always true. The angriest person isn't everybody, and the whole world isn't inside your feed. The internet is not reality. It's a reflection, a distortion, a mirror made of code. Sometimes useful, sometimes dangerous, always incomplete. The problem isn't the technology. The problem is forgetting what it is. A map is useful until you start believing. The map is the territory. A photograph is useful until you start believing the photograph is the person. A profile is useful until you start believing the profile is the soul. Real life still happens across dinner tables, on front porches, at hospitals, at weddings, at funerals, at playgrounds, at coffee shops, at ordinary moments no screen can fully contain. I've never seen an algorithm hold someone's hand. I've never seen a comment section raise a child. I've never seen a viral post replace a real conversation. Some things still require presence. Some things still require people. The internet is not reality. Reality is breathing right now. Reality is the person sitting across from you. Reality is the voice on the phone. Reality is the friend you forgot to call. Reality is the life happening while you're scrolling through other lives. The internet is not reality. And maybe remembering that could change everything. When was the last time you closed the app and opened the front door? Most people think their life changes when they make a big decision, but most lives change because of small decisions repeated thousands of times. Oh. A river doesn't carve a canyon in a single afternoon. The mountain doesn't become a valley because of one storm in June. The oak tree doesn't rise from an acorn overnight while nobody sees. Nature has always understood the power of repeated things, yet somehow we convince ourselves that transformation arrives all at once. One perfect moment, one perfect breakthrough, one perfect day. And when it doesn't happen, we wonder why we remain the same. You become what you practice, not what you wish, not what you promise, not what you post. You become what you practice. The things you repeat become the roads beneath your feet. The habits become the story. The story becomes the light. The story becomes Practice gratitude, and gratitude finds more reasons to stay. Practice resentment, and every room feels smaller. Practice curiosity, and the world becomes wider. Practice quitting, and quitting becomes familiar. Practice showing up, and resilience grows quietly. Most of what we call personality started as repetition long before we noticed what was being built. You become what you practice, not what you wish, not what you promise, not what you post. You become what you practice. The things you repeat become the roads beneath your feet. The habits become the story. The story becomes the life. Transform themselves without realizing it was happening. One workout, one conversation, one page, one promise, one choice, one morning at a time. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just small acts repeated long enough to become identity. And I've watched people slowly lose themselves the exact same way, because repetition doesn't care whether you're building or breaking. It only asks, what would you like to reinforce today? A musician practices scales before the song exists. An athlete practices movements before the game arrives. A gardener waters roots before the flowers appear. Everything living understands. The harvest follows the habit, the fruit follows the seed, the future follows the repetition. Every day is a vote, every action is a vote, every habit is a vote, every excuse is a vote, every effort is a vote, every decision is a vote for the person you are becoming. You become what you practice, whether you're paying attention or not. The days are always teaching, the hours are always shaping, the repetitions are always building something. You become what you practice, so choose carefully, because one day you'll wake up inside the life you've been rehearsing. What are you practicing without even realizing it? You thought they disappeared, the kid you used to be, but they didn't. They've been waiting. I remember the world felt bigger, every street seemed twice as wide. Every question felt important, every feeling amplified. I remember scraped up knees and impossible dreams. I remember believing life would somehow make sense. By the time I grew up, funny thing about that, nobody tells you. The child doesn't leave, they just stop speaking out loud. Your inner child never left, they're still sitting somewhere inside, still carrying wonder, still carrying fear, still hoping somebody sees them. Your inner child never left, they've just been waiting quietly for you to remember. They were always part of the story. The kid who got embarrassed still lives somewhere in your chest. The kid who felt abandoned still remembers how that felt. The kid who loved dinosaurs, drawing pictures, building forts, laughing for no reason, still exists. The kid who got hurt still exists too. We carry both the wonder and the wound everywhere we go. We've just been waiting quietly for you to remember they were always part of the story. I think a lot of adulthood is learning how to revisit old wounds without getting trapped there. Learning how to listen without letting old pain take control. Learning how to comfort the parts of ourselves that never got what they needed back when they needed it. Nobody gets through childhood untouched. Some people carry bruises, some carry blessings, most carry both. What would happen if you stopped criticizing that younger version of yourself? What if instead you thank them for surviving, for hoping, for trying, for carrying you this far? Maybe the child inside you doesn't need fixing. Maybe they need kindness. The kid who was scared, the kid who was brave, the kid who felt invisible, the kid who felt loved, the kid who dreamed, the kid who fell, the kid who kept going. They're all still here. Your inner child never left. They've been walking beside you all along, through every heartbreak, every victory, every mistake, every song. Your inner child never left, and maybe healing begins the moment you stop abandoning them the way others once did. If you met your younger self today, what would they ask you? And would you have an answer? Pain can teach you a lot, but it was never meant to lead you. Touches the stove and learns about fire. The heart gets broken and learns about trust. The dream falls apart and learns about resilience. Pain is a teacher, sometimes a brutal one, but a teacher all the same. The problem begins when the lesson ends and we keep following the teacher long after class is over. Pain is a terrible compass. It points toward the wound, not the destination. Pain is a terrible compass. It remembers the storm, but it doesn't know where the sunshine is. Pain is a terrible compass, useful for learning, dangerous for leading. I've seen people build entire identities around what happened to them. The betrayal, the loss, the disappointment, the humiliation, the failure, the unfairness, the grief, the injury, the abandonment. The story becomes sacred, the suffering becomes familiar, and familiar starts to feel safe, even when it hurts, because pain at least tells us who we are. So we think pain is a terrible compass. It points toward the wound, not the destination. Pain is a terrible compass. It remembers the storm, but it doesn't know where the sunshine is. Pain is a terrible compass, useful for learning, dangerous for leading. I understand why it happens. Pain leaves deep fingerprints. Some experiences change us forever. Some losses never fully leave. Some scars deserve respect. This song isn't about pretending otherwise. It's about asking a different question. At what point does honoring the wound become living inside it? At what point does remembering become reliving? At what point does survival stop being enough? The survivor isn't meant to remain in the emergency forever. The cast comes off, the stitches dissolve, the alarm eventually quiets. Healing isn't forgetting, healing is allowing the future to have a vote in what comes next. Trust again. Pain says never risk again. Pain says never love again. Pain says never hope again. Pain says a lot of things, and not all of them are true. Pain is a terrible compass, but it can be a valuable map. It can show you where you've been without deciding where you go. Pain is a terrible compass, and maybe that's good news, because it means your future doesn't belong to your worst day. Pain is a terrible compass, so what would happen if you stopped asking your wounds where to walk next? What part of your life is still being navigated by something that happened years ago? Somewhere along the way, many of us learned a strange habit, waiting for permission. Permission to speak, permission to dream, permission to try, permission to leave, permission to change, permission to fail, permission to begin again, permission to believe. We wait for parents, bosses, partners, experts, audiences, strangers, as if somebody else owns the keys to a life that's already ours. Meanwhile, the years keep moving, quietly collecting dust on doors we never opened. You don't need permission to become yourself. You don't need a vote, you don't need a certificate, you don't need consensus. You don't need permission to become yourself. The invitation was issued the day you arrived. I know why we do it. Approval feels safe, rejection feels expensive, and belonging matters more than most people admit. So we learn how to perform, learn how to fit, learn how to shape ourselves around expectations, until one day we look in the mirror and realize we've become an excellent imitation of somebody else's idea of who we should be. You don't need permission to become yourself. You don't need a vote, you don't need a certificate, you don't need consensus. You don't need permission to become yourself. the artist has to create before everyone understands. The entrepreneur has to start before everyone agrees. The dreamer has to move before certainty appears. Every meaningful life eventually reaches a point where permission is unavailable, and courage becomes necessary. Not later, not someday, not when everybody approves, not when the fear disappears, not when the stars align, not when the critics leave, not when the perfect moment arrives. No, you don't need permission to become yourself. You never did. You only needed the willingness to stop waiting. You don't need permission to become yourself. The door was never locked, the voice was never missing, the life was never hidden. It was waiting for you to claim it. If nobody could disapprove, who would you become? Somewhere along the way, many of us learned a strange habit, waiting for permission. Oh, permission to speak, permission to dream, permission to try, permission to leave, permission to change, permission to fail, permission to begin again, permission to believe. We wait for parents, bosses, partners, experts, audiences, strangers, as if somebody else owns the keys to a life that's already ours. Meanwhile, the years keep moving, quietly collecting dust on doors we never opened. You don't need permission to become yourself. You don't need a vote, you don't need a certificate, you don't need consensus, you don't need permission to become yourself. The invitation was issued the day you arrived. I know how we do it. Approval feels safe, rejection feels expensive, and belonging matters more than most people admit. So we learn how to perform, learn how to fit, learn how to shape ourselves around expectations, until one day we look in the mirror and realize we become an excellent imitation of somebody else's idea of who we should be. You don't need permission to become yourself. You don't need a vote, you don't need a certificate, you don't need consensus, you don't need permission to become yourself. The invitation was issued the day you arrived. That doesn't mean being reckless or ignoring wisdom or pretending other people don't matter. It means understanding something deeper. No one else can live your life, no one else can carry your purpose, no one else can become what you're capable of becoming. There comes a moment when responsibility outweighs approval, a moment when authenticity becomes more important than acceptance, and that's usually the moment everything starts changing. The artist has to create before everyone understands. The entrepreneur has to start before everyone agrees. The dreamer has to move before certainty appears. Every meaningful life eventually reaches a point where permission is unavailable, and courage becomes necessary. Not later, not someday, not when everybody approves, not when the fear disappears, not when the stars align, not when the critics leave, not when the perfect moment arrives. No, you don't need permission to become your never missing, the life was never hidden. It was waiting for you to claim it. If nobody could disapprove, who would you become? Who? Somewhere along the way. When we're young, we imagine heroes are different, stronger, smarter, built from something rare. And life teaches a different lesson. I used to look at photographs of people who changed the world and wonder what they had that I didn't. Some secret ingredient, some hidden advantage, some extraordinary certainty that separated them from the rest of us. They seemed larger than life, standing on pedestals built by history and distance and time. Your heroes are human, they doubt themselves too. Your heroes are human, they've cried in empty rooms. Your heroes are human, they've made mistakes, missed chances, lost sleep and gotten things wrong. Your heroes are human, that's what makes them remarkable, not less. The athlete misses shots, the musician writes bad songs, the scientist follows dead ends, the leader makes mistakes, the writer stares at blank pages, the inventor faces failure, the teacher loses patience, the parent questions everything. Nobody escapes being human. Not the famous, not the brilliant, not the courageous, not the celebrated. History tends to remove the uncertainty and leave behind the achievement, but uncertainty was there the entire time. Your heroes are human, they doubt themselves too. Your heroes are human, they've cried in empty rooms. Your heroes are human, they've made mistakes, missed chances, lost sleep and gotten things wrong. Your heroes are human, that's what makes them remarkable, not less. I think sometimes we idolize people because it gives us an excuse. If they're extraordinary and we're ordinary, then maybe we don't have to try. Maybe we don't have to risk. Maybe we don't have to grow. But what if that's backwards? What if the reason their stories matter is it because they were different? What if it's because they weren't? What if greatness was never perfection? What if greatness was persistence? Every legend started as a beginner. Every master started confused. Every expert started learning. Every voice started unheard. The distance between ordinary and extraordinary might be much smaller than we've been told. The hero gets scared, the hero gets tired, the hero gets discouraged, the hero gets rejected, the hero gets lost, the hero gets hurt, the hero gets back up again and again and again. Your heroes are human. that's the point. Maybe greatness was never reserved for a chosen few. Your heroes are human, and so are you. Which raises a very uncomfortable question. What if you're more capable than you've allowed yourself to believe? If the people you admire are human too, what's stopping you? Most people imagine the future as some distant place, a horizon, a destination, a someday. But that's not where it gets built. The future isn't hiding in tomorrow, waiting behind some golden gate. The future is being assembled quietly inside the choices that we make. It's built in alarm clocks and grocery stores and phone calls and traffic lights. It's built in conversations nobody else will ever hear on completely ordinary nights. Most lives don't change during dramatic moments. Most lives change gradually. One decision, one habit, one Tuesday afternoon at a time. The future is built by Tuesday, not someday, not eventually, not when everything is perfect. The future is built by Tuesday, by ordinary people making ordinary choices that become extraordinary over time. The future is built by Tuesday, and Tuesday is already here. A friendship survives because somebody made the call. A business succeeds because somebody kept showing up. A marriage grows stronger because somebody listened. The dream survives because somebody worked on it when nobody was watching. History loves the breakthrough but rarely celebrates the thousand quiet moments that made the breakthrough possible. Success has always been built from invisible bricks. The future is built by Tuesday, not someday, not eventually, not when everything is perfect. The future is built by Tuesday, by ordinary people making ordinary choices that become extraordinary over time. The future is built by Tuesday, and Tuesday is already here. We spend so much energy thinking about where we're going that we forget to notice where we're standing. The future isn't a mystery. Most of the time it's a pattern. If you want to know where a road leads, look at the direction it's already heading. If you want to know who you're becoming, look at what you're repeatedly doing. The future leaves clues everywhere. We're just usually too distracted to read them. One workout, one page, one promise, one apology, one lesson, one conversation, one act of courage, one more attempt, one more day. The future has always preferred small investments to grand declarations. Tuesday becomes Wednesday, Wednesday becomes Thursday. The weeks become years, the years become lives, and one day people call it destiny. Even though it started with something much smaller. The future is built by Tuesday, by what you do when nobody applauds, by what you choose when nobody knows, by what you repeat when nobody's watching. The future is built by Tuesday, and today is Tuesday for somebody right now. The future is already under construction. What if the life you're hoping for is waiting on a decision you could make today? Most people spend their lives wondering if they matter, rarely realizing how many lives they've already touched. who still remembers something you said, a conversation you barely recall that helped them through a difficult night, a moment that felt ordinary to you but became unforgettable to them. Funny how life works that way. The smallest kindness sometimes travels the farthest distance, long after we've forgotten it ever happened. You are somebody's miracle, even if you don't know their name. You are somebody's answered prayer, even if they never told you. You are somebody's turning point, somebody's reason they kept going. You are somebody's miracle, whether you believe it or not. A parent changes a life without realizing it. A teacher plants a seed without seeing it grow. A friend answers the phone at exactly the right moment. A stranger offers kindness and changes the course of a day. Most impact happens invisibly, most influence leaves quietly. Most lives are shaped by people who never receive credit for what they gave. You are somebody's miracle, even if you don't know their name. You are somebody's answered prayer, even if they never told you. You are somebody's turning point, somebody's reason they kept going. You are somebody's miracle, whether you believe it or not. I think we're trained to measure importance incorrectly. Followers, awards, titles, recognition, numbers, visibility, attention. Meanwhile, the most meaningful things in life usually happen when nobody's counting. A child feels safe, a friend feels understood, a lonely person feels seen, a struggling person feels hope. No headline records it, yet everything changes. There are people alive today because somebody showed up. People healing today because somebody listened. People smiling today because somebody cared. People moving forward today because somebody believed in them. And sometimes that somebody was you. You may never know the lives you've touched, the pain you've eased, the hope you've carried, the courage you've inspired, the difference you've made, and maybe that's okay. You are somebody's miracle, not because you're perfect, not because you're extraordinary, not because you've never failed. You are somebody's miracle because your existence has already changed lives in ways you'll never fully understand. You are somebody's miracle, and somebody out there is grateful you exist, even if they've never said it. Who would your life be without the people who became miracles for you? For a long time, I thought love was something you felt, and life corrected me. Feelings arrive like weather, they drift in, they drift out. Some days the sky is clear, some days the storm rolls through. Nobody wakes up inspired. Every single morning, nobody feels brave. Every single day, nobody feels patient. Every single moment, and yet somehow the best relationships survive the changing forecast. podcast. Because love is not a feeling, love is a choice. Love is a practice, love is a voice. Love is showing up when it's easier to leave. Love is what you do, not just what you believe. Love is not a feeling, feelings come and go. Love is what remains after the feeling says no. A parent gets up exhausted and still makes breakfast. A partner stays during the hard season instead of only the easy one. A friend answers the phone even when they're tired. A caregiver keeps helping even when nobody notices. A stranger offers grace when anger would be simpler. None of these moments depend on emotion alone. They depend on commitment. Because love is not a feeling, love is a choice. Love is a practice, love is a voice. Love is showing up when it's easier to leave. Love is what you do, not just what you believe. Love is not a feeling, feelings come and go. Love is what remains after the feeling says no. Rarely tell this part because it's less dramatic. Love isn't only fireworks, it isn't only butterflies, it isn't only passion. Sometimes love looks like patience, sometimes love looks like forgiveness, sometimes love looks like boundaries, sometimes love looks like honesty, sometimes love looks like staying, sometimes love looks like leaving when staying would do more harm. Love wears many faces, most of them ordinary. I think that's why love survives when other things don't. Because feelings are passengers, love is the driver. Feelings are visitors, love is the home. Feelings are seasons, love is the climate. Love is listening, love is learning, love is helping, love is serving, love is protecting, love is growing, love is choosing, love is choosing again and again and again. Love is not a feeling, and maybe that's good news, because feelings are fragile, but choices can endure. Love is not a feeling, it's 1,000 small decisions made over time. It's the promise behind the emotion, the action behind the intention, the reality behind the word. If love is what you do, what have your actions been saying lately? Someday somebody will tell a story about you. Maybe it happens years from now around a dinner table. Maybe it happens at a reunion, a wedding, a funeral, a quiet conversation. Maybe someone laughs, remembering something you always said. Maybe someone smiles, thinking about how you made them feel. Maybe someone tells a story you've completely forgotten, yet somehow they never did. One day you will be a story, a memory carried forward, a story, living inside other lives. One day you will be a story, not because you were perfect, not because you were famous, not because you never failed, but because you were here. And being here changes things. It's strange what people remember, rarely the things we expect. Not the resume, not the statistics, not the achievements, not the titles. Usually it's the moments, the kindness, the laughter, the generosity, the courage, the way you made a room feel, the way you showed up when it mattered, the way you treated people who could do nothing for you. One day you will be a story, a memory carried forward. One day you will be a story, living inside other lives. One day you will be a story, not because you were perfect, not because you were famous, not because you never failed, but because you were here. And being here changes things. I've spent a lot of time thinking about legacy, and I don't think it's what we usually imagine. Legacy isn't something we leave behind. Legacy is something we leave inside people. A belief, a lesson, a kindness, an example, a moment, a memory, something that keeps traveling long after we're gone. Every life creates ripples, most of them invisible. The teacher lives on in the student, the parent lives on in the child, the friend lives on in the stories, the mentor lives on in the choices. The love continues, the influence continues, the impact continues, even when the person doesn't. One conversation, one kindness, one sacrifice, one example, one act of courage, one act of compassion, one ordinary moment can echo for generations. One day you will be a story. The question isn't whether, the question is which one. One day you will be a story, and people than who you became. One day you will be a story, and the story is still being written. If somebody told your story tomorrow, what would they say mattered most? I spent a lot of time looking for answers. Maybe you have too. People cross oceans searching for meaning, climb mountains looking for truth, read books, follow teachers, study philosophies, build systems, ask questions, chase understanding, and there's nothing wrong with that. Curiosity is beautiful, but sometimes I wonder if we've made the mystery more complicated than it needed to be. The meaning of life might be simpler than you think. Maybe it isn't hidden, maybe it isn't secret, maybe it isn't waiting at the top of some distant hill. The meaning of life might be simpler than you think. Maybe it's found in connection, growth, service, wonder, and the courage to keep going. Maybe meaning lives in raising a child, helping a friend, creating something honest, learning something new, planting a tree, keeping a promise, making someone laugh. Maybe meaning lives in showing up even when nobody applauds. Maybe meaning isn't one giant revelation. Maybe it's 1,000 small moments that become alive. The meaning of life might be simpler than you think. Maybe it isn't hidden, maybe it isn't secret, maybe it isn't waiting at the top of some distant hill. The meaning of life might be simpler than you think. Maybe it's found in connection, growth, service, wonder, and the courage to keep going. The older I get, the less interested I become in being impressive, and the more interested I become in being present, the less interested I become in certainty, and the more interested I become in understanding, the less interested I become in having all the answers, and the more interested I become in asking better questions. Maybe wisdom isn't accumulation, maybe wisdom is simplification. The sunrise doesn't need an explanation, the ocean doesn't need a mission statement, a child's laughter doesn't need a philosophy. Some things carry their own meaning the moment we stop demanding that they justify themselves. Connection, growth, service, wonder. Connection, growth, service, wonder. Maybe that's enough, maybe that's enough, maybe it always was. The meaning of life might be simpler than you think. Not easy but simple, there's a difference. The meaning of life might be simpler than you think. Love deeply, learn constantly, help where you can. Stay curious, remain grateful, and keep going. The meaning of life might be simpler than you think, and maybe that's the most beautiful part. If life doesn't require a perfect answer, what would you stop overcomplicating? Before you go, there's one more thing. You've probably noticed this album never really gave you answers, at least not many, mostly questions, and that was intentional. Because answers have a strange habit of becoming cages. Questions stay alive, questions travel, questions grow, questions keep working long after the song ends. Maybe you've agreed with some of this, maybe you've disagreed. Maybe a few songs made you uncomfortable, maybe a few made you feel seen. Maybe some of them found you at exactly the right time, maybe some of them didn't. That's okay too. Not every seed grows the day it's planted. What I know is this: you survive things you once thought would break you. You learned things you once thought you'd never understand. You became someone your younger self could never have fully imagined. Not perfect, not finished, not complete, but real. And that's worth something. The world will keep arguing, the headlines will keep changing, the clocks will keep ticking, the seasons will keep turning, and through all of it, you'll still have choices. Small ones, daily ones, the kind that quietly become a life. So before you leave, before the music stops, before you move on to whatever comes next, I wanna ask one final question. Not the biggest question, not the deepest question, just one simple question. When people feel better after spending time with you, what part of yourself created that feeling? And how often do you let that part lead? Good night. Good night. Nobody asked to be born. Nobody filled out an application. Nobody reviewed the terms and conditions. Nobody selected the century. Nobody selected the family. Nobody selected the body. Nobody selected the circumstances. We arrived and suddenly there was a world, a name, a story, 1,000 expectations. And from that moment forward, most of life became people pretending they know what this is, pretending they understand, pretending they aren't confused, pretending they aren't scared, pretending they aren't lonely, pretending they aren't temporary. Maybe that's why we spend so much time trying to impress each other. Maybe we're all just looking around asking, do you understand what's happening? And the truth is, not completely, not me, not you, not anybody. But maybe understanding everything was never the assignment. Maybe the assignment was participation. Maybe the assignment was presence. Maybe the assignment was noticing the people, noticing the seasons, noticing the laughter, noticing the grief, noticing the ordinary miracles, noticing the briefness, noticing the beauty. Because whether any of us fully understand this place or not, here we are, breathing, laughing, building, failing, learning, loving, leaving, arriving again and again. And for whatever reason, against impossible odds, you gotta be here for a little while. So did I. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything.